I wanted to take a break from Prismatic and go over the brand new exotic chest piece, the Mataiodoxia. While this can work with the Prismatic subclass, I do think it works better with Strand with some of the fragments it has to offer. This build is going to allow you to suspend everything on the battlefield and have your abilities up pretty much 24/7. It is a ton of fun and there's a lot going into it because almost everything will synergize with one another. Alright, first things first, let's start off taking a look at the brand new Warlock exotic, the Mataiodoxia. This has the exotic perk Stylostyxis. I think I said that correctly. Targets damaged by Arcane Needle emit a suspending detonation when defeated, and landing multiple Arcane Needles on the same target immediately triggers a larger, more powerful detonation. Defeating suspended targets grants melee energy. Your Arcane Needles are strong against barrier champions. So this exotic has a whole paragraph to break down, but it's honestly pretty easy to understand. First things first, your melee can now just stun barrier champions, which is very nice. If you have Unstoppable and Overload on your weapons, you can then use your melee to stun barrier champions, and now you just have access to every single champion. The next part is defeating suspended targets grants melee energy. The really cool part about this is that any suspended enemies will actually grant this melee energy. Your teammates can suspend them, you can suspend them with any one of your abilities or even your weapon, and you will be granted this melee energy. It is not only the suspend that comes from your melee, but then that leads on to the next part, is that your Arcane Needle can now suspend enemies. The very simple way to do this is just throw your Arcane Needle, get a kill, it will cause a suspending detonation, and everything around it will suspend. The other way you could use this is to throw an Arcane Needle into an enemy. It will sit there and you get this little indicator to say, hey, there's an Arcane Needle in this person. If you kill it, that will suspend that enemy. This is nice on things like a champion, because if you do stun a barrier with its other capabilities, the moment you kill that barrier champion, everything around it becomes suspended. But even if you use this on a lower tier enemy and it doesn't get the kill, it's nice to be able to get that kill, then to suspend every single enemy around them. In my playtime of using this, I never really used the shoot 3 Arcane Needles into a single enemy to cause a suspending burst. I never really found the value in it where you could just shoot 1 Arcane Needle to make the suspending burst, or again, if it doesn't kill the enemy, you can then kill that enemy to also make that suspended burst and suspend everything. So this exotic is clearly the let's buff your melee and suspend everything. Now let's move to the other exotic that can suspend everything, and that is Wishkeeper. So I'll just give a quick rundown of how Wishkeeper works. Essentially, if you get precision hits or precision kills, you'll build up stacks, and then once you have enough stacks, you can hip fire the bow to cause the suspending trap. Any enemy that walks into that trap will of course be suspended, and on top of that, this weapon does more damage to suspended enemies, and it has a faster draw time every single time you shoot one. And then the cherry on top, you can also insert the catalyst so your Snare Weaver traps can suspend more targets. So this weapon pairs beautifully with this build. Not only can your melee suspend and get a bunch of benefits, now your weapon can also suspend and get a bunch of benefits on every single suspended target. And the suspend doesn't end there. If we jump into our subclass, we're going to be doing this a lot more with everything else. So our first aspect is going to be Mind Spun Invocation. So what this is going to do, you can consume your grenade. We're going to be running the Shackle Grenade, and once we consume the Shackle Grenade, we will get the buff called Weaver's Trance. With Weaver's Trance, every single time you get a kill, it will cause a suspending detonation around the enemy you kill. It works very similar to how Mataiodoxia works, and it is just another way of suspending enemies. Our next aspect is going to be the Wanderers. So tingles you throw attach to targets and detonate into a suspending burst. Destroying a tingle creates a suspending burst after a short delay. Threatening final blows create a tingle. So the last part where threatening final blows create a tingle doesn't matter whatsoever. We're not really playing into threatenings with this build, but the main thing is your tingle can now also suspend enemies. You're going to be making tingles a lot with this build, so this is very nice to have. And with some of our fragments, tingles are also going to be extremely important. Now for the rest of your abilities with this build, obviously Arcane Needle is going to be very strong paired with Mataiodoxia. On top of that, I like to run Healing Rift because we will be able to spam our rifts a lot. This is just nice for your survivability. And Needle Storm is also a very strong super. It's one of the highest single target damage supers in the game, and while everything else is going to be ad clear or suspend based, this is just going to be very good for doing a lot of damage. Now for our fragments, we're going to be taking Threat of Mind. So defeating a suspended target grants class ability energy. This is how we're going to be able to spam our class ability. If you remember on our exotic chest piece, every single time we kill a suspended target, we also get melee energy. So you want to be killing suspended targets all the time to constantly refill your class ability and melee. And since you are running your Healing Rift, this is going to be your main survivability tool. Our next fragment is going to be Threat of Fury. So damaging targets with a tingle grants melee energy. This is another way your tingles are going to come into play. Not only can they suspend, but now whenever you deal damage with a tingle, you'll be granted some melee energy back. And the cool part about this is since your tingle does suspend, that means you can then kill those suspended targets to grant yourself even more melee energy from what the fragment is already doing. It is a good thing to note that if you pick the tingle up and throw it, it seemingly grants a lot more melee energy than you just shooting it, but shooting your tingle is also going to be very beneficial for once we get into our artifact perks. Regardless of how you do it, you're going to be getting extra melee energy whenever you destroy a tingle on an enemy. Now our next fragment is going to be Threat of Generation. So dealing damage generates grenade energy. This is is pretty self-explanatory. Every single bit of damage you do with this build, you're going to be granting grenade energy back. Since suspending enemies will grant our melee and class ability, now this is just nice to have because every single bit of damage we do, we'll be getting our grenade energy back, so we can activate Weaver's Trance a lot more often. And then for our final fragment, we're going to be running Thread of Continuity. So suspend, unravel, and sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. This fragment alone is the reason I think Mataiodoxia works better on Strand than Prismatic, because the suspend you make from it is just going to last a lot longer. You will get the unravel benefits as well, but that's not the main thing we're going for here. Just being able to make that suspend last a lot longer, and everything else being able to suspend enemies as well with this build. 9 times out of 10, most enemies on the battlefield aren't even going to be able to shoot you in the first place. So that's it for the subclass. If we take a look at the artifact, there's not a lot going on here, but there are two very important ones. Things like Elemental Siphon. So rapid final blows to the kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So this is nice because now, since we're running Witchkeeper, which is a strand bow, and we're obviously going to be running a strand super, we can make a lot more tingles than what we would normally make pretty much every single time the tingle cooldown is up. You can make another one, which is very nice because that will then pair it with things like Threaded Blast. So destroying a tingle with a strand weapon creates a larger and more damaging explosion. This perk right here alone is very, very strong. You can shoot your tingle with your Witchkeeper. You're going to kill everything. If it doesn't kill them, they will then be suspended. And once again, you're granting melee energy every single time you deal damage with this tingle. It is very, very good. And then nothing else here is super important. If you want to take something like counter energy, so if you stun a champion, you'll get some energy back. This is nice since your Mataiodoxia can actually stun a champion. You can throw your melee, it's going to use your cooldown. It will then stun that champion and you'll get a bunch of your melee cooldown back. So this is a nice one to throw on there. It's just not a super main important one of the build. And now for stats, as always, go with 100 resilience so you can get your 30% damage reduction. I would then play into 100 strength so you can get your melees back as much as possible. Since it is a melee based exotic, you want to be playing into that as much as you can. And then whatever points you have left, definitely try to get to 100 discipline so you can proc Weaver's Trance a lot more often. And pretty much every single other stat here doesn't matter too much, but if you want to go with more recovery, that doesn't hurt. Now jumping into our armor mods, we're going to take a harmonic siphon so we can make orbs on rapid strand weapon final blows. This is nice to have. It will play into our armor charge and some of our mods. Next up is going to be hands on, so we get more super energy whenever we get a melee kill. Since we can throw our melee a lot, this is just some extra super energy, and again, your super is very strong with this build. And for that, we're also going to be taking dynamo so we can reduce our super cooldown whenever we use our class ability near enemies. Since we can spam our class ability a lot with things like Threat of Mind, this is just a nice little bump to our super that we can always take advantage of. Now next up on our arms is going to be a harmonic loader just so we can reload the bow a little bit faster. And in all honesty, if you want to swap this out for something like bolstering detonation or even momentum transfer, you absolutely could, but I just like the consistency of having harmonic loader up just so I can reload the bow a little bit quicker. But again, swap these out for whatever you wish. Next up is going to be a grenade kickstart, so whenever you use our grenade, we'll get some grenade energy back, and this is based on our armor chart, so at 3 stacks we'll be getting a bunch of energy back. This is great to have so we can proc Weaver's Trance a lot more often, and even if we just throw our suspending grenade, this is also just great to have so we can get it back a lot faster. And on top of all of that, we're already getting our melee and class ability back extremely quick, so I think taking a grenade based mod to get that back a lot faster is for sure the way to go. Now for our chest piece, always go with resistant mods. Just be sure to swap these out for whatever content that you're going into. And then for our boots, we're going to be taking a recuperation, an invigoration, and an absolution. So recuperation will give some health every single time we pick up an orb. This on top of your healing rift is going to be your main form of survivability. On top of that, whenever we pick an orb up, we'll get melee energy back. Since you want to throw your melee a lot, this is great to have. And then on top of that, absolution, so whenever we pick an orb up, we'll get cooldown for every single ability. This is great because obviously you want to throw your grenade and your class ability a lot as well, so pairing all this together, you'll be able to spam all your abilities a lot. Then finally, for our class item, I like to take a outreach so we get our melee energy back whenever we use our class ability. Since we're going to be getting super whenever you use our class ability near enemies, it's just great to have to get some extra melee as well. We can spam it a lot so they'll play into each other. And then powerful attraction, so we can pick orbs up that are around us whenever we use our class ability. Again, we can spam that class ability a lot so we can pick up orbs, play into everything else that we've already been going over. And then finally, reapers, so whenever we use our class ability, our next kill will make an orb. This is just great to have because since we can spam our class ability a lot, again, we could just make some extra orbs to further play into everything in this build. And now for the most important part of the build, this is the Transmog I am running. I tried to go for a very sleek strand look. I ended up taking advantage of the new ornament on the Mataiodoxia. I think it looks pretty sick. I even have the strand energy coming out of the Warlock bond just to give it a little bit more flair. And if you want to make your Warlock look like this, definitely be sure to copy it down. But all right, that is going to do it all for me. Let me know what you all think about this build in the comments below. I know it's not a prismatic build, but it is one of the best builds in the entire game. Just being able to suspend everything is going to be extremely strong for in-game content, and I can't wait to try it out in something like Grandmasters. Anyway, so that's going to do it all for me. I wish you all the best of luck in putting this build together for yourself. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.